All right, welcome everybody. It's 10:30, so we'll go ahead and get started. My name's Clayton Johnson. I'm a veterinarian with Carthage Vet Service, and I'm the moderator for the session today. We're going to talk about cost of production, which certainly is always important, but has been extremely important over the last couple of years as the whole world has seen inflation make our cost of production really across every individual line item go up pretty substantially. We've got three awesome speakers. My role is just to introduce them so that you can hear what they have to say. Brad Eckberg is with us from Metafarms to talk about how to use data to improve your bottom line. Metafarms is certainly one of the larger record systems available to producers and certainly has some pretty good insight to cost of production as well as throughput metrics. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brad.
Everybody hear me okay? All right, thank you. Appreciate the introduction, Clayton, and a honor for me to be able to speak here at Leman. Wanted to kind of dive right into it a little bit, so I'm going to give you a little bit of background about myself and Metafarms, kind of where the data is coming from, and a little bit about myself, and then we're going to kind of dive into some mortality trends and the bag grower effect, and then kind of some using data effectively type suggestions. So I grew up in southern Minnesota, Martin County. So if you know Martin County, it's the heaviest pig populated county in Minnesota, and a lot of opportunity as I was growing up to work in pigs. So when I was a wee young one in high school still, I got a job in a sow farm. So in Martin County, worked at Lake Country Farms. Basically did everything from pressure washing to breeding, farrowing, and then graduated from high school. Moved over to Albert Lea, Minnesota, and went to school at night, wanted to be an accountant. And then during my day job was working at Precision Pork, which is a sow farm in the Albert Lea area. Became breed barn manager, and then I thought I was management material, so I went to go work for Pipestone and managed a 2,800 head sow farm in Martin County. After my sow farm, 8 years in sow farms, went to work at Holden Farms on the grow finish side. About 8 years there, dealt with independent contractors, ended up kind of heading up their nursery department for a while, and then was also pretty involved with the research side in collaboration with Kansas State University. So after the sow side and the grow finish side, I really loved numbers. I wanted to be an accountant, but the GAAP rules wasn't really my thing. Working with pigs was, so I ended up staying with pigs, and then went to Metafarms here back in 2014, where currently I'm the senior sales account advisor, and then I am in the analytics and development projects, and then do a lot of on-farm interactions with our customers as well. So basically, bring it all together. I kind of have that sow farm experience, the grow finish experience, and then the analytics at Metafarms, which is ultimately allows me to help our customers pretty directly. So a little bit about Metafarms. So like Clayton said, we've got a lot of information in our system. We've got 2.3 million sows in our platform right now. It makes up about 600 to 650 sow farms. Basically, Canada, the U.S., and Australia would be our largest markets. On the grow finish side, we've got 30,000 weekly movements. We've got 40 million carcasses that go through our system. It's like, what was it? 28 million pigs started. We've got a lot of pigs that go through our system. We've got 100,000 monthly feed imports that bring ingredients and prices. So there's a lot of data that goes through our system. We work with a lot of industry affiliates like the financial institutes and veterinarians and whatnot. So kind of as we get into the data here a little bit, I want to talk a little bit about the bottom line, kind of how it can affect what some data can be to affect your bottom line. Basically, I kind of narrowed it down to mortality. So as we look at our expenses, we look at feed costs that continue to go up, we look at transportation costs that continue to go up, our labor costs that go up, but ultimately, like, from where can I lower my costs or where can I capture more revenue, I have my kind of focus in on the mortality section. If you have more pigs to be able to produce, you're going to be able to obviously generate more revenue. So I'm going to focus a lot on mortality. It's definitely not going to be the most uplifting conversation because unfortunately, as probably many of you know, the industry in the US has definitely seen an increase in mortality throughout the last 5 years and then some. So I'm really kind of focus in on that. And then we're going to talk again a little bit about kind of what a bad grower effect can have on your bottom line. So when you kind of look at it from a mortality standpoint, from a sow to a finish standpoint, you've got the sow death, you got the pre-wean mortality standpoint, but then there's some other areas like the dead on arrivals and inventory discrepancies that some producers may not think about that ultimately are pigs that were produced, but we did not capture any revenue from them. So on the sow side here, so wanted to take kind of a 5-year analysis look, and you'll see that I did exclude the COVID year of 2020 from all of the kind of benchmarking numbers as, COVID really kind of threw a lot of the numbers out and a lot of decision-making processes as it was very tough times for us all. So from a sow death loss standpoint, you'll see here that in 2018, the U.S. sow farms in our database had a 12.2% average, whereas from the 2023 data, which would be January to August of 2023, we're at a 15.6 sow death loss. It's about almost 2.5% increase or 28% change. Interesting is that if you look back to like 2008, a little over 15 years ago, the sow death loss was 8.2% in our program. So we've almost doubled our sow death loss in a matter of 15 years. So then I kind of want to take another dive and kind of looking at those sow farms, those U.S. sow farms, and breaking them into 3 kind of different sections. So the light green would be the percentage of the farms that were less than 10% sow death loss, and then farms that were greater than 15% have the red, and then everything in between the 10 and 15 would be that gray type. So really the impact that you're seeing here, looking at 2023, over half of all the sow farms are greater than 15% mortality, whereas almost 20% are less than 10% mortality. So definitely a large increase overall from the farms that are really getting bad, and then this kind of where, whoops, sorry about that. So then the next kind of slide looks at those farms that are less than 10% and greater than 10%. So on the left would be less than 10%, and kind of the thing to look at here is the line really represents what that average is for those farms that were less than 10%, but the gray bar really represents, okay, the year-over-year decline in the overall farms that would be less than 10%. Whereas on the right side, you're going to see that the overall farms, again, kind of as the previous slide stated, are continuing to increase. And really, the line bar really represents that 20.1% of the farms that are greater than 15% are 20.1%. So the mortality on these groups are really getting a lot worse on the sow side. So as we dig into the pre-wean mortality perspective, again, unfortunately, the trends continue to head upwards where we're at 14.8% in 2023 as opposed to 13.2% in 2018. 2008 was a little under 10%, so again, we continue to rise from a pre-wean mortality percent. Furthermore, as you kind of look here, same type of breakdown, those farms that are less than 10% would be in that green, farms greater than 15% would be in the red, that we have a lot more farms that are in that red section. 86% of the farms are greater than 10% pre-wean mortality. So this one was pretty interesting where you can kind of see a lot of farms were in 2018 were less than that 10%, but those have really kind of leveled out where we have a large amount of farms that are definitely over 15%. So kind of taking a little deeper dive into that pre-wean mortality percentage, you're going to see on the left side, the overall average for those less than 10% farms are relatively the same, but we do have a decline again in the overall farms where then when you look at the groups or the farms that are greater than 50%, they're averaging 20.6% death loss. So again, the severity of the death loss in pre-wean mortality continues to rise. As we kind of head over to the grow finish side, you'd think that from a finishing mortality, grow finish mortality, it would be pretty relatively straightforward, but you also want to be able to put into account not just the deads that are being accounted for, but the dead on arrivals, the pig grading deaths, and inventory discrepancy, all of which I'm going to touch base on. From a nursery mortality, so again, kind of looking at the last 5-year analysis with taking out the COVID 2020 year, our nursery mortality, again, for U.S. Groups only, we're at 4.86 year to date, whereas last year was an all-time high at 5.18% mortality. Kind of crazy when you think about kind of where mortality has gone from a nursery perspective. Obviously, we've had a lot of health issues, and it definitely affects the younger pigs. Off to the right here, we've got a grouping. In the green would be the groups at less than 2%, and the red would represent the groups that are greater than 5%. 29% of all of the nursery groups thus far are over 5% nursery groups. Or if another way to look at it is 69% of all groups are closing out greater than 2%. So definitely seeing a lot more higher mortality nursery groups. Kind of looking a little bit, again, similar to the south side, breaking down the grow finish side, looking at the nursery groups less than 2%, again, continues to decline here, where overall the mortality is relatively the same. But then when you look at those groups that are greater than 5%, they continue to increase. And then look at the average mortality for some of these, for those groups that are greater than 5%. So again, as we kind of look back here, the average mortality for nursery is 4.86 in 2023 so far, year to date. But when you look at those groups that are higher than 5%, they're 11.19%. Looking at the finishing, again, continues to trend upwards. We're at the highest average that we've seen in our database thus far, 23 some years, so continues to rise, unfortunately. And when you kind of look again at the breakdown of all those groups, the green is less than 3%, the red would be greater than 10%. We have almost 14% of all of our groups that are over 10%. Or another way of looking at it would be that 78%-ish, 76% would be above 3%. Kind of looking again at that breakdown here, less than 3% groups, the average is relatively the same, but we're having less of those groups that are less than 3%, whereas we're just seeing the opposite, again, with the greater than 10%. And then 14.9% average mortality for any group that is over 10%. So a lot, again, very heavy death loss that we're seeing in those really bad groups. Wean to finish, this would be for single stock wean to finish groups. Again, we're continuing to trend the wrong way as an industry. And then kind of looking at that breakdown, we're seeing, again, more of those groups that are greater than 10% here in the upper right. Taking a little bit of a deep dive into the individuals. So the less than 3%, we've got relatively the same type average. It is trending up a little bit, so we're having a little bit more less than 3% groups. But again, for those groups that are greater than 10%, 16.26%, again, on single stock wean to finish groups is a pretty high number. One of the areas that I think gets missed quite often is, okay, other than, okay, what my mortality is for the group, what are those other variables? And the dead on arrival, so this would be transportation type deads when they go to a packer. So again, we've got 40 million carcasses that go through our systems. There's a lot of pigs, a lot of sales data that goes through our system. And you can see, obviously, with the hot summer months here in the U.S., that the sow dead on arrivals continues to increase. But from a 2022 average, we're at 0.26% DOA, which, relatively hasn't changed very much, but another 0.25% deads on pigs that you've already put feed into, you put the labor into, the vaccine into, the transportation into. Again, all those pigs, these are very expensive pigs to lose from a mortality standpoint. So another area that some producers don't think about very often is inventory discrepancies. So basically pigs that, I've got a certain number of pigs that come in and a certain number of pigs that go out, and by going out would be as a cull pig, as a dead, or as a market hog, or if it's a nursery going to a finisher, as a feeder pig. But the difference would be, if you're not matching, well, those pigs went somewhere. Did they die? Did they not get written down? Were they stolen? Were they miscounted? What was that? So kind of taking a look at 2022 for the finishing groups, we've got 0.21%. So when you look at 22 million pigs that started in 2022, at 2.21, that's 46,000 pigs that went unknown. Like, we don't know where those pigs went. So that's a pretty large number. Again, a lot of money went into those finishing pigs. Where did they go? So I took an example of a company, they market 800,000 pigs a year, and I said, all right, well, let's look and see what was their real mortality. So on the finishing groups that they had a 6.28% mortality. But then when you add in the dead on arrivals, they had 0.37%. Then you add in the pig grading deaths, and that would be from the nursery going into the finishing. Those pigs that were euthanized there was another 0.71%. And then you throw in the inventory discrepancy, and that's a 0.75 that they had, again, just for their finishing group, which their real finish mortality was an 8.11%. So now I'm going to take a kind of a look at what a bad grower effect kind of does. So what I did here was I said, all right, there's some key husbandry skills that a grower, again, I'm kind of focusing on the grow finish side here, has that they're kind of in charge of. They need to start the group up right. Then you got the big three that they need to make sure is taken care of, not just on starting up the group, but on a daily herd check, is the feed, water, air. Do they have the right feed at the right age? Are they not running out of feed? How's the air? Are they doing proper ventilation? And then water, is it clean? And then as a grower, they need to actively communicate. Are they communicating with the service staff or their company to say, hey, we're having some issues here? They're there every single day. They're being paid to basically make sure that they're taking care of those pigs. And then ultimately, from a marketing standpoint, a lot of companies do have sort crews, but others, the growers themselves, are sorting out those pigs. So what I did was I touched base with one of our customers, and I said, give me one of your good growers and one of your bad growers. And I said, just give me what their names are, and I want to kind of dig into their data a little bit. So this company is located in southern Minnesota. I picked two producers that had the same pig source, they have the same water type, the same feeder type, and the same water type. And then they had, with the two group kind of comparison, they have similar fill dates. So one of the reasons why I really like doing this was, like, from my time at Holden's and stuff, I, as a service person, had like right around 15 different growers that I had, and I really like to see how are those growers that, if we give them challenging pigs, they're going to make the most of it, versus a bad grower is going to take a good group of pigs and probably make them bad. So one of the things that are most common, and I'm kind of upset about this personally, is that I was going to actually make a book about excuses of why growers can't take care of daily chores and there's basically every excuse under the book dealing with growers of why they can't do something. So what I did here was I asked the GM for this production company, I said, just give me the grade which you think, without looking at data, just give me the grade that you think that each one of these growers, the good grower and the bad grower, are at starting pigs. Are they treating pigs well? Are they getting them off to a right start? So like for this good grower, they're consistently got the barn clean, they're ready when the pigs arrive. Whereas the bad grower, they usually do a bad job washing and they have a cold BAM or a barn. And then treating pigs, they do a good job treating those A pigs, where the bad grower is treating C pigs. He said that, the GM said that this guy is really good at pulling those C pigs, will not treat A pigs, doesn't think that they need to be treated, and waits till they become C's, which most of us know those pigs are very hard to restart. And then just from pulling pigs, are they pulling those right type pigs? Are they waiting too long? What are those feeder adjustments? So are they really kind of too loose? Are they too tight? Are they running out of feed? And then from a ventilation standpoint, what do they use? They both use kind of smart controllers, so they put curves in there so that it's one of those things where the grower doesn't have to worry about it. Overall, the good grower got a B, the bad grower got a D. The other thing, like from a service person when I was at Holden's, the thing that Rick really hit me hard was what these growers are getting paid for to do their job on a daily basis. So just from an example standpoint, they get paid per space. So just as an example, a 2,000 head barn at $38 a space is $76,000 a year, or $6,333 a month, or $208 a day, or at 2 hours in a barn a day, which some growers don't put even that much time in, is $104 per hour. That's pretty good money for taking care of my pigs. So as a service person, I knew this, and I'm like, okay, we need you to treat these pigs. We need you to pull these pigs. We're paying you to do your job like I'm getting paid from my boss to do my job. So as we look kind of at, from a performance standpoint, so kind of a few of the key takeaways, again, same pig source, same type fill time, same barn attributes. What's the performance difference? And again, this is just a one snapshot, one grower, but you have almost half the death loss from the good grower to the bad grower. You've got a better average daily gain. You've got a better feed conversion from the good grower. Everything from those key metrics, plus 13 days left on feed. That's a huge difference from a good grower to a bad grower. Just a quick snapshot. Again, kind of a takeaway is, are you really looking at your good growers to your bad growers and looking and saying, what are some of the trends? What are some of the outliers to say, is this somebody that I want to re-sign to another contract when that comes up? Just some analysis a little bit on the mortality standpoint. Both had some death loss early on, but then you've got that bad grower in that week 3, 4, 5, 6. Did they not start those pigs very well? Are they not treating those early pigs very well? And another type of analysis that's important to know is, what is that late-term death loss? Is it a transportation type loss, or are those pigs pigs that are just basically sitting there and not going to make market? And off to the right, this would be an example of one of our reports within Metafarms, but it's a great breakdown of the different carcasses that fall in those different weight ranges. Where this can be really beneficial is to be able to say, is that grower just gate cutting, or are they taking the right pigs at the right time when it's time for market? One of the areas would be some of our customers utilize is a group ranking report, which really is, I've got my group right here, and then everything in yellow would be what that closeout was. This would be a great example of a report where you can give it to your contract grower and you can say, hey, here's who you are compared against your peers. So that, and this would be kind of different pig sources and stuff, so it's kind of itemized. You can't really tell who's who, but it gives a kind of that scorecard or feedback to the grower on how they did against their peers. And a lot of people are very competitive out there, and being able to see kind of where you stack up with an easy type of analysis type report is great feedback for that grower. So just kind of some closing comments here. if we're going to look at mortality, whether it's on the sour grow finish, we got to have that information in a timely fashion. This kind of just looks at the Metafarms sow mobile app, which you can put sow events in. We kind of rolled out our sow mobile app back in 2017, and you can see that a lot of producers are taking that information and getting it into Metafarms. Obviously, then they got the analytics that they can pull out in a timely fashion. Common trend you can see that I can see when I'm looking at producers' numbers and interacting with them is those that are up to date on the right information at the right time and making the right decisions have high ROI or a lot better performance. On the grow finish side, we have a mortality app that you can easily put in your deads and everything. 2023 year to date, 80% of all of the deads that come into Metafarms on the mortality app. We've got alerts on there, we've got thresholds alerts, we've got reminders and stuff, but also we have the analytics. And the reason for me saying that is that it's real-time information that's being put in from that caretaker into the office as opposed to a phone call, an email, or a fax. There's a lot of different metrics to look at from a cost standpoint, on the sow standpoint, but really kind of make it simple. So to help you affect your bottom line is, from a daily standpoint, what is your breed target? What's my born alive? And what's my sow death loss? So just from a daily standpoint, kind of keep it simple. Whereas so much metrics to look at, so much data to look at, narrow it down, focus on that. On the weekly standpoint, how are we doing from a target standpoint? Do we need any data type cleanup? And then if you have any batch farms, like a 4 or 5 week batch farm, you should be reviewing them just like a closeout on a grow finish. Every time a group closes out, you should really look at how that farm performed for that batch. Same thing on the grow finish side. There's a lot of different metrics to look at on the grow finish side, but again, narrow it down to what is the most important. On a daily perspective, you should be looking at what's our deads, what are the higher groups from dead, do we need to have someone come out there and look at them? From a market weights, how are we doing? Are we heavy? Are we light? Are we in the box? Are we out of the box? And from a pig grading standpoint, whether it's from a sow to a nursery or a finisher, or a nursery to a finisher, are we having a lot of pigs that, as we're starting them up, that we're euthanizing those pigs? One of the, just quick story on the pig grading standpoint, in my prior life, we euthanized a lot of pigs when they came in from a nursery to, from a sow farm to a nursery. So we said, well, what if we just tag those pigs and say, what if we would have euthanized, what if they would have made it to market or not? How many of them would have gone? We tagged 1,000 pigs, and 2/3 of those pigs that we would have euthanized actually made it full value to the packing standpoint. So the point on that is, give pigs a chance. You don't necessarily know if pigs, especially from a sow farm to a nursery, are going to make it or not. Weekly standpoint, marketing, mortality type analysis, and then periodically, looking at your closeouts, using data to really drive home improvement type areas. And then from just this has become really popular within our customer base, is really looking at different attributes, whether it's different barn attributes, feeder type, ventilation type, water types, to service staff, to different types of sources, looking at data and being able to find out outliers and opportunities with like a tool like a Power BI or a Tableau to help your bottom line. So I appreciate your time.
We've probably got time for one question. Do we have anything from the audience for Brad?
I'm curious, the benchmarking and weekly and daily reporting is great. Do you do anything to track or implement tracking of corrections that get made in response to receiving the data, and then tracking how those farms do over time with particular corrections that they make, and did it really change their outcomes?
Yeah, so we've got, we utilize Power BI, we call it Insights, within Metafarms and stuff. And we've got definitely customers that are tracking that on the south side and the grow finish side, basically action type items. And there's a lot of different I'm going to go data geek a little bit, but there's different attributes within farms or groups that you can track and say basically a start end date for when you implemented some type of a change and be able to pull that data out to a Power BI. Again, we're very visually friendly. We love data. We love visual stuff. Bottom line is, yes, a lot of producers will do that, but quality data is also another really important one, especially on the side to make sure that the data is very high quality. And what we've seen from our standpoint as a platform is as we've rolled out the Sow Mobile and you bring that data input over to the farm staff, we've had to put in a lot of different business rules to make sure that the data is coming in at high quality because of the person that's putting them in that data. So long story longer, yes. We've had to definitely adjust ourselves to the person who's putting in that data as opposed to the office staff. Appreciate it.
Very good. Let's give Brad another round of applause. Thank you, Brad.